pasuk tells us in Navi, Aryeh Yishag Milo Yira. When the lion roars, who is not fearful? Who is not scared? And Darshay Rishumos tell us that Aryeh stands for Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippurim, Hoshana Rabbah. The four amazing, so to speak, events or days that we live through at this time of year. So we understand Aryeh Yishag Milo Yir, when the lion roars, who is not fearful. The mashal given is that, let's say you're walking down the street and all of a sudden you see a lion come towards you, and you're like, oh my God, you run. You're like, oh my God, I'm very scared. And yet when you go to the zoo, the first place you go to is to go see the lion. The first place you go to, you want to go see the lion. You want to wake them up. What's the difference? One place you're running away from the lion, one place you're running to the lion. The difference is there a mechitza? Is there a hefsek between us and the lion? If there's a cage, if there's a moat in between, there's no problem. That lion's over there and I'm over here. But if it's just me and the lion, that's much scarier. That brings up in me certain intense feelings. We have to try to break down the mechitzas at this time of year. Elul, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, that's all behind us. But now there's Sukkot, Hoshana Rabbah, the zenith, the pinnacle, the highlight of Sukkot, the last day, Hoshana Rabbah. That's the last in the Aryeh Yishag Milo Yira. And the question is, what is it about Hoshana Rabbah or Sukkot in general that is so special, that is so unique? And just to think about Sukkot a little bit and its place amongst the holidays of the year, Sukkot, as we know, the Torah Shebichsav itself emphasizes simcha when it comes to Sukkot. There's simchas yontif by every chag. But if you look in Dvarim Perek Tezayin, Chag HaSukkos Tasa L'cha Shivas Yamim, and the pasuk says, V'samachta b'chagecha, v'hayisa'ach sameach. Sukkot has a emphasis of simcha. The question is, what is it? What is so happy about Sukkot that the Torah itself emphasizes the simcha? And not only does the Torah emphasize the simcha, we know that the greatest party, so to speak, the greatest celebration in the Beis HaMikdash was on Sukkot, Simchas Beis HaShoeva. Without getting into the details of why Nisa Chamayim, what's so happy about that, but the Rambam tells us, as we know at the end of Hilchos Lulav, even though there's a mitzvah to be misameach on every day of every holiday. On Sukkot there was super simcha in the Beis HaMikdash. What they do, they built the platform for the women, and they had the dancing and the greatest tzaddikim, and they did juggling as described in Maseches Sukkah. So much simcha. Why? Why Dafka Sukkot? What about Pesach? Pesach is also the birth of our nation. Shvuos, Maimon Har Sinai. Why is Sukkot so unique in its aspects of simcha? Just to emphasize the question in a little different way, what is it about Hoshana Rabbah? Again, it's not so much in Chazal, but it is a little bit in Chazal. Sometimes we say that Rosh Hashanah, that's the Ksiva V'Chasiva. No, but it's not done yet. Right? Tluyim v'om divad Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, boom, Ne'il is done. And yet, there are some sources that say, until Hoshana Rabbah. Hoshana Rabbah, aren't you done on Yom Kippur? What is Sukkot Hoshana Rabbah at? We're done. Nechta v'nechtam. And yet, if we look in the sources, the Rambam tells us, Yom Kippurim in Ilchos Shuva Perek Beis Halacha Zayin. Yom Kippurim uzman Shuva lakol la'yachid v'larabim. Yom Kippur is the zman Shuva lakol. V'hu kates mechila v'slicha liYisrael. That's the kates. That's the end. So it's done. So what's Sukkot? What's Hoshana Rabbah? What is this holiday after everything is done? What is it meant to be used for? And if we think about Sukkot, right, one of the highlights in the minhagim of Sukkot, every day we say Hoshanas. Hoshana lamancha Elokeinu, Hoshana. Save. Sounds like a Yomim Noraim type of tefillah. Hoshana. On Hoshana Rabbah we say it 49 times, over and over again. Hoshana, Hoshana, save us, save us, save us. What do you mean save us? Yom Kippur's over. Why is there this Yomim Noraim type of prayer on Sukkot? And one more even in Chazal. The Gemara tells us in Maseches Sukkah, what did they used to say at the Simchas Beis HaShoeva? Tana Rabban, the Gemara says in Sukkah on Daf Nun Gimel, Yesh man omrim ashre yalduseinu shlobisha ziknuseinu. Elu chasidim anshi maisa. V'yesh omrim ashre ziknuseinu shekipras yalduseinu. Elu ba'alei tshuva. Elu ve'elu omrim ashre mishalo chashachata. Praises the one who did not sin. Umishachata yashav yimchalon. If you sin, do tshuva. So there's a tshuva element even on Sukkot / Hoshana Rabbah. But what is it? Aren't we done? Isn't it finished? So what is so happy about Sukkot? And what is the unique element that's left after the Yom Noraim are really over? So if you look in the Torah Shebechsav and Parshas Emor, there's a fascinating ha'ara, which again, many are aware of, but maybe we don't always think about it. We know Parshas HaMoadim we have in Parshas Emor and Vayikra, in Parshas Pinchas in Bamidbar, and in Parshas Re'eh in Dvarim. Each one has its own unique characteristic. But if you look in Parshas Emor, the Torah lists off there the Moadim, and we start with Shabbos, which is his own question, what Shabbos is doing there, and then we have Pesach, and Shvu, and Sfiras HaOmer, and Shavuos, and Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. And every parsha gets Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Lemor, a lead-in introduction, Daber B'nai Yisrael, including Sukkot. So Sukkot has in Parachav Gimel, Vayidaber Hashem Moshe Lemor, Daber B'nai Yisrael, B'chamisha Asar Yom Lachodesh V'yazeh Chag HaSukkot, Shivas Yamim L'Hashem. It's 7 days. B'Yom HaRishon Mikra Kodesh Kom Melachas Avodah L'Asasu. 7 days don't do Malacha. Eila Moadei Hashem. These are the Moadim, and the Torah sums up all the Moadim that have just been spoken about: Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Sukkot. Eila Moadei Hashem Tikros Mikra Kodesh. This is it. Karbanos, Milvad Shabsos, Milvad Matrosichem. Besides Shabbos and the Karbanos that you bring for Nadarim and Nadavis. Done. We think we're finished. And yet, keep reading. The Torah starts again. There is a second treatment of Sukkot, the only holiday that has a double treatment. We finished already. We even had the sum up pasuk. Then the Torah says, b'chamisha asar yom lachodesh hashvi, b'asar etzvos aras tachog v'eschar Hashem shivas yamim. You already said that. No, 7 days. Ulekachlechem b'yom harishon, take the daled minim, v'chagosem oso chag l'Hashem, b'chodesh hashvi tachog oso. B'sukkos teishu shivas yamim. We already know that. What's going on here? Why does Sukkot have a double formulation? And to add, why only in the double formulation, in the second formulation, do we have the Maisa HaMitzvos? Sukkot and Daled Minim are only mentioned in the second section of Sukkot, and not the first. And if we think that's the only double in the Torah about Sukkot, we're not finished yet. If we look in Pinchas, if we look at the Karbanos that are brought on the Chagim, Pesach Shavuos has Ayil Echad, one ram. V'graftem Mishal Hashem Parim B'nei Bakar Shnayim V'Ayil Echad V'Shiva Kvasim. Next, V'graftem Olo B'nei Hashem Parim B'nei Bakar Shnayim Ayil Echad Shiva Kvasim. Sukkos. V'graftem Ala Isher B'nei Hashem Parim B'nei Bakar Shlosh Asar. Okay, the cows are more and they go down one each day. Elim Shnayim. Kvasim B'nei Shana Arba Asar. The Ayil and the Kvasim are double. 1 and 7, 2 and 14. So not only is there a double treatment in the Torah, but there are double karbanos that we have to bring. And the question is, what's going on here in Sukkot? Says Rav Hutner in the Pachad Yitzchak, unbelievable. Says Rav Hutner, Sukkot, and it's so mistaver, we just have to explain it. Sukkot is the culmination of 2 holiday cycles. On the one hand, it's the culmination of the Chagim, Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. The Shalosh Regalim, there are Shalosh Regalim. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. Sukkot is the end, the ultimate. But Sukkot is also the culmination of the Tishrei holidays. Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot. So Sukkot needs a double formulation, because Sukkot plays a dual role. Sukkot wears 2 hats. It's the end of the Yom Noraim, and it's the end of the holiday cycle. And our job now for the next few moments is to think about and to analyze, so what role does it play in each of these systems? In the Regalim system and in the Yomim Noraim system. What exactly are we supposed to think about? Right, Rav Rosner in the Pachad Yitzchak of Yom Kippur, Ma'amar Ches, Lamanu Shtayim Hein Ma'arachos Shel Kedushas HaMoadim LiYisrael, Shalosh Regalim v'Yomim Noraim. There are two cycles. V'lamanu eifo midivre chachamim ki yachazo shel kedushas chag asukas l'chal hamoadim yachas kaful. It's a double. Ki mipaas asher hu hamikra kodesh ha'achron shemishalosh regalim. I didn't emphasize it. If you look in the first section of Sukkot, the Torah says mikra kodesh, mikra kodesh. That's a chag lashon. Uniquely, hariyu chosim es ma'arechas kedushas man shal regalim. But it's also a different type of mikra kodesh. Also, it's a mikra kodesh related to the Yom Noraim. And maybe that's why emphasized in those psukim is Shabboson, Shabboson. Because it plays another role. Chag HaSukkos avapishe mekomo b'kedushas ma'arechas ha'regalim b'komakom nechla bo gam tochen misyaches l'kedushas Yom Noraim. So now let's think about this. How does it wear two hats? How does it play both these roles? How does it stand, and what role, what function does it play? So if we think about the Shalosh Regalim, let's learn that Ma'areches, that system first. Sukkot is the third of the Regalim. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. So you might think, on the surface, that all the Regalim are basically different events happen, but they're all about similar ideas of feeling closest to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, being Ola Regel, but it's all one package. That's even what one of the Achronim, the Sifsei Chachamim, one of the Achronim on the Gemara suggests. Why is it, something that maybe one has ever thought about before, we know we have the Gemara in Shabbos Daf Lamed Aleph that tells us about the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. Zera Moed Nashim Nizikin Kachim Taras, all learned out from the Pasuk in Yeshayahu. So every word in the Pasuk refers to a different Seder of Mishnayos. The question is, why is it that only one of them is in Yachid? Lashon Yachid. Zraim, Nashim, Nezikin, Kadshim, Taros. What about Moadim? Shouldn't it be Moadim to be parallel? It could be Zera, Moed, Isha, Nezek, Kodesh, Tahar, or Zraim, Moadim, Nashim, Nezikin, Kadshim, Taros. Why is Moed the only one that's not parallel to the others? So one could give opposite suggestions. I think the Sifsei Chachamim says really because there's all Moed, it's all one idea. All the Moadim are really one message. That's what's all Moed. One could possibly say exactly the opposite. Every Moed is a Moed b'fnei atzmo. Every Moed has its own message that we can learn. So let's talk about Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. Is it a package? Yes, but maybe there's a process here. The Sefer HaYikarim, Yosef Albo, tells us that there are 3 Yesodos HaEmunah. The Rambam has 13. The Yud Gimel Yikarim. Rabbi Yosef Albo, in the Sefer HaYikarim, boils it down to 3. He squeezes it. What are the 3? Mamar Aleph Perek Dalid says the Sefer HaYikarim, Ve'echrechim l'das elokit heim shlosha. Mitzias hadas, Hashem, existence of God. Hashgacha l'schar va'onesh. Kadosh Baruch Hu is involved in our lives, schar va'onesh, and Torah min hashamayim. Those 3. Who we are, who God is, that we live by the Torah min hashamayim, and schar va'onesh. Those 3. Maybe if one thinks about it in a deeper way, the 3 regalim that we are asked to experience each year parallel these 3 Yesodos HaEmunah. Pesach, if we think about it, what's Pesach about? What does the Ramban tell us in a famous piece in the end of Parshas Bo? Says the Ramban, there he deals with the question of why there's so many mitzvos that are Zecher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim. How many mitzvos are there to remember Ma'amad Har Sinai? Maybe 1, Birchas HaTorah. How many mitzvos are there to remember almost every other event? 1 or 2. How many mitzvos are there to remember Zecher L'Yetzias Mitzrayim? About 12, 13. Shabbos, Yontif, Kiddush, Tefillin. Many mitzvos. Bechor, Pidyon HaBen. Why are there so many mitzvahs? Zich Yetzias Mitzrayim. So the Ramban goes through how Yetzias Mitzrayim was the most miraculous time period in our history. And miracles, this is the Ramban's formulation that is quoted, and miracles reflect HaKadosh Baruch Hu's hashgacha and his existence, and that he runs the world. And that's where the Ramban says, "B'nanisim hamufursamim adam modeh b'nisim hanistarim." And through the open miracles, we recognize that Hashem is involved in every single aspect of our life. She'ein la'adam chelik b'toras Moshe Rabbeinu. A person doesn't have a chelik in Toras Moshe at shenamin until he believes. She'kol dvareinu mikreinu. Everything that happens to us is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem exists. All the psukim in the process of the Makos. Ein kamoni b'chol haaretz. Ki l'Hashem haaretz. Mitzias of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's what Pesach is about. HaMofes HaNifla Mora Sheyesh La'olam Ekolam Echadsho. HaKadosh Baruch Hu exists. V'yodea u'mashkiach v'yachol v'chulu. That's Pesach. Shavuos, of course, Torah Min HaShamayim. Ma'amad Har Sinai. The Ramban counts it as a separate mitzvah saseh daraisa every day to say Birchas HaTorah. Shenitz tavinu lahodos l'shmo yisbarach. B'chol eish shenikra b'Torah. We are called upon to thank and to praise HaKadosh Baruch Hu whenever we learn Torah. Ala tov hagdol she'asalon, on the great goodness that He gave us. B'sito taraso eleinu, by giving us the Torah. V'hodienu ha'ma'asim ha'retzuyin lefanav, and He let us know what He would appreciate through the Torah. Shebahem nenachal chay olam haba. Through those mitzvos we could get olam haba. What a great gift! The goal of life is to get olam haba. Through the Torah we know how to get olam haba. But what's Birchas HaTorah? Thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu for Ma'amad Har Sinai, Torah Min HaShamayim. That's Shavuos. And of course, what's the third? Schar va'onesh, Hashem's involvement in our lives, and that He cares about everything we do. Sukkos, Machlokas, Sukkot Yud Aleph, whether it's Sukkos Mamish or Adonai HaKavod. Sukkos Mamish, Hashem was involved in our life and protecting us from the elements in the desert. Adonai HaKavod, which is what we paskin, Hashem surrounded us with a cloud of glory. That's symbolic of Schar va'onesh, which is all about HaKadosh Baruch Hu's involvement in our lives. Not just He exists, He gave us the Torah, and He's involved in our lives and cares about what we do and will punish and reward us for what we do. So if we think about the first cycle, we have Pesach and Shavuos and Sukkos, the three Yisodos HaEmunah. Hashem exists, that's Pesach. Torah Min HaShamayim, that's Shavuos. And third, Hashgacha Schar va'onesh, Hashem's involvement in the world and caring about the world, and His continuous connection to the world. That's Sukkos. A number of years ago, the story was going around from Rav Bitterman. He quoted the story. I mentioned this before in other shiurim. Remember, there was a man who was online at before Pesach, Vidas before Pesach. He was online in the supermarket because he was buying his doing one of his big shoppings for Pesach, as everybody was doing. And there was a woman in front of him online, and then the man too in front of him who was giving in all of his groceries. And finally, when the man finished giving in his groceries, all of a sudden he said, "Oh, I forgot something." And he runs to get paper towels. Runs, everybody starts mumbling on the line. Sometimes people forget things, okay? Sometimes it happens to all of us. And then as he gives that, he's like, "Oh, I forgot something else." And he runs and everybody starts getting a little hot under the collar. What's going on? Finally, a third time, he says, this guy who's wearing a suit, he's usually never in the store, but before Pesach, his wife is at home. So he went to the store and he's doing the big shop. He goes to the man. He goes speaking over the woman in between. "What are you doing? Finish your shopping and then pay. Don't go and then you forgot and this and that. I'm saying, just finish already. What's your problem? Enough already. We're all losing our patience. We all have to get him for Yantif." And the woman in between starts telling him, "Calm down. It's okay. He got it." And the guy realized that he went a little too far. He realized he went a little too far. And it's a few days before Pesach. I can't go into Pesach like this. He goes over to the guy and says, I'm sorry. I went a little too far. How much is your bill?" So what are you talking about? He says, "I want you to be mochel me. I don't know how you can be mochel me. I just embarrassed you in public. Maybe if I pay your bill, you'll be mochel me. If I pay your bill, will you be mochel me?" He's like, "You're not paying my bill." He's like, I want to pay your bill. How much is your bill?" He takes the receipt from the cashier. He sees it's 2,500 shekel. He says, takes out his credit card. He gives it to the cashier. He says, are you mochel me if I pay this? But Mola, are you mochel me b'leiv shalom? He says, yes, but I don't. Quiet. Done. The guy pays. The other guy leaves. Things quiet down. The woman pays. The man pays his own bill. He goes out. As he's walking out, he sees the man crying on a bench outside with all his groceries. And he says, what, you still embarrassed? I don't understand. You said you were mocha me. It's over. It's done. Go home. He says, you don't understand. So, but I don't understand. I know I lost it. He says, you don't understand. I came to the store. We have no money in the house. My wife said, just go to the store. Hashem will help. I'll stay home and say Tehillim. You just go to the store. So I went to the store. I got online. I didn't know what to do because the credit card would have bounced. I have no check. So when I finished giving in the groceries, I'm like, I don't know what to do. So I say, you know what? I forgot something. I went to get something else. And I went to get something else. I'm like, Hashem, I don't know what. And all of a sudden, look what happened. And the guy said, I don't believe you. He says, look, call my wife. He called his wife. He put his wife on speaker. He says, Tamshich liknot, ani agi tehillim. The guy was in shock that he was the tool that HaKadosh Baruch Hu used. Without kavana, he took out his checkbook and wrote 12 checks for 2,500 shekel each and gave it to the guy. 3 years ago. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in our life. Tashgacha. Schar va'onesh. Hashem is involved. That's the message of Sukkot as the end of the first cycle. But then there's the other cycle. Sukkot as the pinnacle of the Yomim Noraim. And this is a little trickier. Because what do we need after Yom Kippur? We had Rosh Hashanah, we had Yom Kippur. So what's Sukkot? What more do we need? So the Torah tells us in Tafresh Chaf Hei B'Gimel Sukkot, as we know, that really Sukkot should be in Nisan. We went out of Mitzrayim, so we should have Sukkot in Nisan. Why is it pushed 6 months later? So it's Nikar that you're doing a L'Shem Mitzvah. In the springtime, everybody's going outside to the backyards. But in the winter, in the fall, everybody's going in. You're going out. So it's Nikar. Okay. Says the Vilna Gaon, no, it's something deeper. It's not Stam. 6 months later, in Tesvav, Tishrei, it happened to be a good day. Says the Gra, historically, something major happened that day. That was the day that Ananei HaKavod returned after the Chet HaEgel. Do the math, says the Gra, in his commentary on Shir HaShirim. Right, Chet HaEgel, we lost our special connection. Moshe Rabbeinu goes off for 40 days and 40 nights after Shavasa B'Tammuz when the Luchos were broken, and he comes back down on Erev Rosh Chodesh Elul and says, you're forgiven. Goes back up on Rosh Chodesh Elul, and he comes back down on Yom Kippur with the second Luchos. And what happens the next day? Vayimi Machras, Moshe Rabbeinu starts announcing that it's time to build a Mishkan, Nedava, for the Mishkan, on the 11th day of Tishrei. They collect for 2 days, the 12th and the 13th. On the 14th, they start building the Mishkan. On the 15th, the Ananei HaKavod return. So historically, Hashem came back to us on the 15th day of Tishrei. That's when the Ananei HaKavod returned. But one step further, we could ask, why didn't the Ananei HaKavod return right after Yom Kippur? Moshe Rabbeinu came down and gave a Slicha Mechila. So why did the Ananei HaKavod return right then? We had Slicha, we had forgiveness. Says Rav Matisyahu Solomon in the Manas Chaim in Moadim. Because let me give you a mashal. Even after, let's say I wronged somebody and I apologized. Then he says, you're forgiven. The relationship is still tainted. The relationship is still not the same. Until I then go out of my way and do something for the person I wronged. I didn't just say I'm sorry, but I do something for them. I do a goodness for them. I buy them something. I act on their behalf, and they realize that I'm serious and I want the relationship to be totally repaired and pure. That's what happened. On Yom Kippur we had forgiveness. But is the relationship the same? So in the Midbar, when they started building the Mishkan, Hashem says, Ananei HaKavod are back. Years later, what about nowadays? We're forgiven on Yom Kippur. Only once we have Sukkot, when we spend 4 days buying the Daled Minim, getting it ready, building our Sukkah, and finally we sit in our Sukkah, we do so much for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So then the process is completed. It's not just that we have forgiveness, mitzad HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but then we went and did something for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and we met him. And in that way, we're able to complete the cycle of tshuva. And that's the end and the highlight of the Yom Noram cycle. Not just that we're forgiven by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but that we then act and do something to show that we want the relationship. And we love the relationship. And that's what Sukkot is about. And that's why there's so much simcha. Because Sukkot, now putting it all together, is the final stage of both processes, like Rav Hutner said. It's the third of the Yesodas HaEmunah, of the Shalosh Regalim. But it's also the third. Rosh Hashanah, there's a Ksiva, there's a Chasima. But now the relationship is perfect and back to what it was. The Adonai HaKavod returned. And if you want to put it all together, maybe one could say, the Shalosh Regalim, the ultimate, is all about what HaKadosh Baruch Hu does for us. He exists, he gave us the Torah, and he's Mashkiach and Schar V'Onesh. Yom Noram is about what we do for him. Our coming back, our apologizing, our acting, and showing that we want the relationship, and in that way, we're able to solidify the relationship. As the Rambam writes in the end of Hilchos Tshuva, the love sickness that we have to have for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yeser mizeh, more than a man to a woman. Tia avas Hashem b'leiv ovav, shogim bo tamid, b'chol vavcha v'chol nafshecha. This is what Sukkot is about. Yehi Ratzon, that we take this message of Sukkot into the winter, into the unknown. This year is so unknown, but we take this feeling of the highlight of Sukkot representing the highlight of both of these processes, of these systems, and we learn the message, and we keep HaKadosh Baruch Hu close in our hearts for every day of our lives, and from here on in, no matter what happens, we know HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us. Chag Sameach.